How is everyone out there doing today? We're here recording today. This is myself, Prime Minister and National Grand Sheik Tarik, and we wanted to do a recording today. We've been trying to do this recording for several times, so trust me, this one works today. We are actually recording because we really want to talk to you about why your children should not be in the public school systems. It's very important, and we believe that the reason our people are still continuously putting our children in these systems is they really have no idea what the public school system was created for and what it's all about, and how it's actually dumbing down our children. And so Taj and I wrote a book together about a month ago, and it's called The Origin Perils of Education. Taj has it right there. And the reason we wrote the book was because we wanted people to realize that sending your children to the public school system is not the right choice. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a governmental agency the other day, and they were asking about my grandchildren homeschooling, and I told them they're being homeschooled. And they were like, oh, that's great, fantastic. And, well, the little one, too. And I was like, yes, everyone gets to have the benefit of education in this house. And I know a lot of us have a problem with the word education, but really I think it's because we have a misconception of what education is. But the erudition for our people, the educational system for our people, is because we're getting a system of education that does not belong to us. That education system that was created out there was created for industrial workers, for labor workers, for slavery. It was not created for free-thinking beings. They don't want you to have critical thinking. If you read the General Education Board information, which is in this book, it tells you why they created that system. And when the National Grand Sheik gets on the floor, he's going to read to you that information. And so we're setting up a GoFundMe page, and what we wanted to do was put this recording on the GoFundMe page because we're looking for you all to help us keep our school alive. This is the only thing as Moors that we actually own. And you have to think about something. When you own something, you do more for it, you think about it differently, and you invest in it. When it's something that you think is someone else's or someone else created it, then you don't really invest in it. And we want you to really invest into the online schooling for Moorish children. Is exactly what it says. And our parents are a part of every part of the school. They get the creative ideas and thinking and things that they want to put together. We got the newspaper going now for the online schooling, and when Taj is on the floor, I'll get in and show you all what it kind of looks like. The school journal is called our Online Schooling News Journal, and that was created by our school and our parents and students. We have information on calendars that we do for our school, as well as we have some people are trying to sign their children up just for the Jania's Reading Circle portion of our school. And so we just want to talk to you a little bit more today about the online schooling, about why it's important to support our own, because Prophet Noble Duality did tell us that no greater power is needed amongst our people than economic power. And economically, this is how we need to set up our foundations. Believe it or not, that if you look in the public school systems and other school systems, the education system is what sets up the communities. And so we have to educate our children. If we want free thinkers, if we want not the Negro mentality to be with our children, then we have to teach them how they are supposed to think. These are critical times and critical ages, and I'm speaking to mothers and fathers, but mothers, by universal law, you are the very first teacher. You know, your child thought of you as God until they were lied to, right? So if you send them to the public school, they learned about some other God, some hot, blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, they think there was a Jesus or anything like that. They're not learning the truth. And by universal law, it's your job, mother, it's your job to teach the truth. I also want to talk about Principle 3 and the rights of a child also, because I wrote about this in the Rights of a Child book that I did write about, is that if you are naming your children these Negro mentality names, this Negro, black, and colored names, some of us are giving our children great names like Kia, Rashad, Jamal, Abdul, but then they have the last name of Johnson and Wilson and Jones. You are giving your children back into slavery. So you've given them a free first name, but then you connect them to slavery in the last name. And please don't try to sell me on, oh, I looked it up and it meant this, I looked it up and it meant that, because it's not yours. Okay, we didn't name our children those names. Those names do not belong to us. They belong to another individual. Prophet Noble Ali was very clear. He said, give Rome back everything that belongs to them. So we have to stop making excuses on holding on to the things that do not belong to us, because you can't capture something you did not create. Those names are not created for you as melanated people. When now in this era time in 2023, no Asiatic child should be born with a slave name. And that goes for first name, if you want to give your children a middle name, and the last name was called an attribute. Those things should not be those names. And so you need to fix that. And no matter how much you don't like it, whatever, you need to fix it, because we have to correct the wrongs. We got to put our people back out front. And there's nothing wrong with it. I hear somebody making fun of those names, Booga Booga, Jamal, Abdul, the criminals. That's what the European mindset puts into you, that everybody's an Abdul is a criminal, so you can name your child after them. And as long as you keep naming your children after them, you're keeping them into a slave mentality. There is nothing wrong with our names, and we need to take advantage of that. In this era time, we have so much freedom with our thoughts and our creativity, and we need to utilize that and stop making excuses to hold on things that do not belong to us, including the public school system. I have to say this before I turn it over to Taj, that we had, when the COVID boom hit and they was mandating those shots and letters and records, we was flying up. Our school doors wasn't open full enough, right, for enough people to sign up. But as soon as they lifted that mandate on that COVID, operation that they did, which we know for a fact that it was a pandemic, okay, they planned it. When they opened those doors back up to let your children back in, a lot of you all decided to not pay this school, which you owe fiat to this school still. You took them back to the public school system, those systems that was not designed for our children, because you look at them as babysitters. They feed your children breakfast. They feed your children lunch. Then you send them home for dinner, and you give them a bath, put them to bed, and put them back out there in the system where you're allowing someone else to teach your children. And then you say, who is this child in my house? What is that disrespect? What is it that you said? And your children mumble underneath their breath, and they saying smart things to you. And then you don't know who these people are, because now you've allowed other people into your household. So when they're out there mingling with those other unconscious children, they're picking up those attributes, whether they're positive or negative, and then they're bringing them back into your house. Now you got to fight 3-4 people in your house, and you got one child. You have to think about those things, that we have to set our society up so we can be very, very successful. But as long as we keep asking other people to educate our children, to erudite them, and then we want to know, when we're trying to teach them why they're not Negro, Black, and colored, why they shouldn't have a dress up to their behind and a shirt down to their breast, and we can't get through to them because we're showing them that it's all right to do that. Another thing is, a lot of sisters make excuses on what not wearing their turbans or having their heads wrapped. I heard it all from everything a while. But you tell me how you can justify not wrapping your head, but you can justify wearing European clothing. You can wear that clothing all day long, right, and justify wearing it, but you want to make an excuse for not wearing your own. It doesn't make sense. We have to first change our mindset, which is change our very way of thinking. And parents, it starts with you, and pass it down to your children. So we just want to come on here today, and we'll talk to you a little bit just about some of the things that we find very virtual and critical. We have a school of our own, and we need to support our own and stop making excuses for it. And I have to cover this. The Sheik they put up about the book that Taj and I wrote, which we just showed you, and someone had a nerve to come on there and say, Taj don't need no more money. He don't need no more fiat. First of all, what we do, we don't get paid for. First of all, I just want to make that clear, not that Taj care. And second of all, if he was a gazillionaire, it would not matter if he wrote a book. He has the right to be paid for, because the prophet lets us know that a servant is worthy of their hire. You will run out and buy all the stuff these Europeans put out there on the market, everything, and you don't complain about it, from the dollar store to the $10 store to whatever, you purchase it. Why is it when it comes to us, we always find a reason not to support our own? And then we want to know why economically we're in the conditions that we're in. Because the prophet let us know in the Moorish literature, it states that all business ventures of people fail. And that does happen, but this is not a failure. It's not going to be. But he said the problem with the failure is those who do not support it and those who are in the very condemnation of the failure. So you want to condemn it after you didn't support it. And so, therefore, the school needs your support. And we're not ashamed to get on here and say that. But we've been open since 2015. Matter of fact, I believe I opened on September the 9th of 2015. And we've been open ever since. But now we have staff. We have instructors that need to be able to be paid. We need to be able to keep the lights on and the doors open. All right, and we need to keep internet services since we're online schooling. So we're asking for your support to help us with this. We need to raise fiat, enough fiat to make sure the school moves on. And we need to make sure we enroll more students. We need to make sure that students are enrolled in this school to keep it going. And we want to reach out as many minds as we possibly can. This is the way that we do it. We have to start with the mindset of our children. We have to educate our children in a system that is not going to fail. Let me say it again. Educate our children in a system that is not going to fail them. We don't want to hype them up into another system. We want to make sure that they're in a system that we can make sure they're successful in. And that is here, online schooling for Moorish children. We're recording from the national headquarters here. And this is our headquarters. This building, all of this is our, but this belongs to the Moors. Everything I do is for us as a people. It's not about me. It's about us as a people. All right? And that's why we have to make sure that this is a success. All right? All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the National Grand Sheik, Tarik Bey. I'm so glad to have him here with us today. You know, and always, Taj got my back, so regardless, always. And so he's going to talk to you about this education system and why we should not have our children in it. And he's going to read again from the book that we just published. It's just a small pamphlet, 20 pages of why and what's so important about it. Go ahead, take it away now, Grand Sheik.
Assalamu alaikum. Islam.
Alaikum assalam.
Shalom. Vadimekum. One of the important things that we need to talk about is the reality that most of our people are not aware of the fundamental fact that a schooling system is in place to underpin the general direction in which a society is directed or goes. It's vital to the state of mind, the state of association, the state of politics, and the interchange between humans, preparing them to take their places among the affairs of men. And often it's not looked at that way. It's just looked at as something that we do because we were told to do it. But one of the other important things is that our people are not aware or have not been aware that the General Education Board operations at North America is a political engineering foundation operation. It is not there to establish erudition for children. It's established to educate them under animal husbandry to prepare them as what is known as permanent worker class. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. And we already know that all over the land, for generations, we've had our people complaining about the conditions of the school systems, particularly in relationship to our children in our communities, as being not only underfunded, but degradable and degrading, incompetent, non-effective in relationship to our children being prepared to take their places economically, socially, and politically with the rest of the communities. It's always been a complaint. However, what you realize, Prime Minister, is that our people, number one, need to be made erudite of the political system that they're under. And logically, those who have been living off your virtues and your birthright are not going to inform you that the political operatives that have been controlling your estates and the jurisdictions in your matters, whether you're dealing with in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, or an even territorial jurisdiction, that it is you're being governed by de facto body politics known as United States Trading Corporation Company. That's their last registration, as you can see, 7/15/1926. Now, of course, you have been told in the public schools that that is a country. And but the fact of the matter is, it's a private corporation run from Davos, Switzerland, which is a conglomeration of hybrid European corporations into a one operative entity under manumission operations, where all of the estates of persons held to servitude were manumitted to a board of directors known as the Congress for the United States, etc. And this deals with the manumission that's misrepresented to the people during and after the Abraham Lincoln administration, and has much to do with the political arrangements that were made since they eliminated him from physical body, the real politics, or the converting of the republic into what is known as the U.S. democracy operation. That's a learning curve within itself. These are their corporate papers. Now, in relationship to that, for those who are not necessarily aware of real-world politics, so that you can do some research in relationship to how you even interchange with such persons under their de facto profile venues, do a little research on the Clearfield Doctrine, and that'll give you some background as to how these people are dealt with by other corporate entities and others who really know the real politics. That's as an aside. But understand that the General Education Board was set up by John D. Rockefeller and Frederick Taylor Gates as being the major leaders of setting this up. Not the only, but the major parties for preparing a permanent working class. And the education system is known as an animal husbandry training platform. That is what it serves. Now, as an example, we want to read to you their philosophy page, which is available for the public record, but we also know that most of the people have never been aware of it only because they have not done research, while at the same time they have eagerly submitted their children to these people in the name of education, etc. Here we go. Yeah.
Page 13.
Page 13, 14. Now, this is their philosophy page. This is their missionary work. And this deals with that all of the liberal arts involving grammar, etymology, orthology, grammatication, etc., right? And all of these principles that were already established for centuries before European colonial operations in the Western Hemisphere were pushed back or suppressed. And that deals with human erudition, all right? And it's generally referred to as the 7 liberal arts, with all their subcategories of disciplines to prepare humans for proper erudition in human interchange. All of that was suppressed, and the General Education Board was established to do this. General Education Board philosophy. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hand. The present educational conventions fade from their minds. Unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, orators, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, or lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of which we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is very simple, as well as a very beautiful one, to train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children into a little community and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. Very direct. That's animal husbandry. That's their philosophy page. Isn't it interesting how many years and decades that our people have went to what they knew as PTA meetings and all kinds of community meetings relative to the problems that they've discovered with their children, their corrupt socialization, bad habits, etc., lack of reading skills, lack of mathematical skills, lack of skills in any of the serious disciplines, not knowing it was planned from the beginning. And the employers and employees and administrators who are subject to the foundation of the General Education Board must adhere and take fidelity to that philosophy, which is why when what we always refer to as good teachers entered into the system, if they did anything that went against the animal husbandry training and actually did productive things that actually made the children more erudite, they would be pushed out of their positions and or harassed and or directly fired, which is again why a lot of really qualified teachers were never really allowed to truthfully teach the children from an erudition perspective, only from an animal husbandry education perspective. Now, this is commonly known by all politicians. It's just not talked about logically among the persons who have been tagged under the Circle Church and Chancery as quote-unquote U.S. taxpayers. That's another information-based body of information that you really need to learn about too. You need to be schooled about that. That's another subject matter, which is also why the parents, out of their lack of knowledge, submit their children to this animal training programming, thinking that they're being made erudite to prepare them for the real world of economics and social political bodies politics, all of which is actually denied them. Now, and many parents who get frustrated not being aware of this philosophy, you will usually make the moral and ethical argument relative to the betterment of their children while delivering them to the mental slaughterhouse of animal husbandry and not knowing it. That's not opinion. That's the established fact.
That's right.
Now, let's talk a little bit of facts about the history. How did we get to where we are in relationship to the John D. Rockefeller, Frederick Taylor Gates mind control operations, etc., with different aspects that we could go into, not at this particular time. This includes the human phenotype operations that created the mind control system that you are controlled with now, called racism and prejudice, under the phenotype operations established via Frederick Johann Blumenbach and Carlos Linnaeus, adopted as a political engineering paradigm. That's another issue that's also applied within this animal husbandry programming. This is where you get the common argument of race and prejudice that covers up the abuses that are actually imposed or inflicted upon the children, which are really diversionary. In fact, diversionary. So let's talk about the planned political attacks on pedagogy. Now, most of you don't know what pedagogy is. Now, pedagogy is the original systems for erudition of children prior to hybrid European colonial operations enforcement at North America. Now, the pedagogy sourced instructions comprise the common basis for established educational conventions operated on the land with both social political jurisdictions at North America before the imposition of the General Education Board of 1902. The pedagogue is a teacher and instructor specializing in the art of the erudition of children. Pedagogues in general operate for the good characterization of children and were known for dedicating their efforts to cultivating the best interest of the children. Pedagogy, as a rule, was absent of the suppressions and compromising political whims and corruptions imposed by slavery supporting bottom traders and or bought off U.S. politicians. Most U.S. politically directed bribes deemed for funded legislation acts were and are disguised from the public as quote-unquote slush funds and campaign contributions. The positive pedagogy benefits of a liberated people and the progressive efforts of its existence were a threat to colonial politics. Therefore, the demise became a missionary focus for the founders of the General Education Board members. Pedagogy was thereafter deliberately misrepresented and minimized by government cronies and subsequently artificially removed politically and socially. Thereafter, the established conventions of institutional pedagogy work on the land in North America came under attack, being held as obsolete. Pedagogy was strategically and wrongfully deemed to be politically constricted and suppressed. This little-known political General Education Board debauchery is the origin of the suppression now experienced by the natural people who recognize the positive value of private schooling and of homeschooling. Now you know what the political intrigue negatively affects homeschooling and private school advocates in these days. Clearly, we all have serious birthright restoration work to do. That's just introductory. That's the real politics, and I know that most of you parents never even heard of pedagogy because you didn't know of its existence. So prior to 1902, that era, from the late 1800s to 1902, with the political establishment of the General Education Board for Animal Husbandry, you didn't know of the several liberal arts that was a standard. And most people didn't even have a knowledge relative to today, knowing that prior to the early 1900s, many of the children spoke 3 or 4 languages as a norm. Because the idea is that the schooling system progressed, not knowing that the reality of the erudition systems that were already established actually had been suppressed. And the fact of the matter is, one of the reasons we even shared that is because you need to know what happened to you, what got you to where you are right now. Now, the other deal of it is, most of you who have done a little bit of study know of the necessity of the international community to aid in bringing some remedy to the people, agreed internationally on the rights of indigenous people. Your right to go back to your culture, to preserve your culture, to control the destiny of your own children. And even in part 1, sections or Article 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., said that children have a right to name and nationality, which Sheik Durriyyah brought up to you earlier. Not knowing the issue of status, the estate, etc., these subject matters is not familiar to you because they were suppressed. They're not taught in schools because the schools are not there for human erudition. They're there for animal husbandry training for a permanent working class. And so their own philosophy page exposes that, etc. And so some of the things that you need to know about that need to be a part of your erudition, not just your children, but the parents themselves, to even comprehend the value of homeschooling and of private schooling. So you must study some of the following words and law terms in order to understand what the administrators know that they've been holding back from the people. But for people who know the real politics, have been well aware of this. So one should also apprise oneself about the following organized societal and law status matters. Use your unabridged dictionaries and law dictionaries for research and additional informational support. Remember to dedicatedly inform yourselves and by mere consequence or to inform your children, i.e. offspring. Expand your studies on the following words and terms. 1. Status. Status is a natural person's legal condition, whether personal or proprietary. Status involves the legal relations of the person to the rest of the community. Status includes the rights, the duties, the capacities, and the incapacities which determine a person to a given class. Status also means, quote unquote, estate, because it signifies the condition or the circumstances in which one stands in relationship to one's rights and to one's property. So keep that in mind. This is again why the nom de guerre or the branding system was used to brand the Aboriginal people as blacks and Negroes in order to create what is called a caste nom de guerre status, and is hidden under the word segregation. And this was so that they could target them for the animal husbandry training mainly, because they were the major targets, not just limited to them, they were the major targets targeted for permanent worker class. Keep that in mind. 2. Estate. Estate is the interest which anyone has in lands or in any other subject or property. The estate is constantly used in conveyances in connection with the words rights, title, and hereditaments, corporal and incorporeal. Thus, estate includes and involves all such interests and is, in a sense, synonymous with all of them. Trusts. Equitable or beneficial right or title to land or to other property held for the beneficiary by another person, in whom resides the legal title or ownership recognized and enforced by courts of chancery. These are operative systems in society, period, that is not discussed with persons held to the General Education Board, because they're primal to the erudition that should be dispensed to children at a very young age. And knowing that most of the parents don't even have this, you know the children don't have a chance. And so the parents, through their own ignorance, not by their lack of intelligence, their lack of knowledge, keep submitting their children to actually persons who are servitude, serf holders, who have a private corporation designed from a military operations to prepare a permanent worker class. That is known as the General Education Board 1902, John D. Rockefeller, Frederick T. Gates Animal Husbandry Training Program. That's been operating since 1902 officially. although they impose themselves over a period of time. This is why your children can't compete in the real world. This is why they deal with the Carlos Linnaeus Blumenbach mental mind control operations of race to cover up the fact that their birthright has been stolen and that they've actually been trained under animal husbandry, not under human erudition. Again, land, and this is very important. There is a whole area. There's a whole area that must be going over about the land, because the land is held in trust. Keep that in mind. So when we get into land, that's even more extensive. But the trust or the beneficial right or title to a land or to other property held for the benefit or the beneficiary by another person in whom resides the legal title or ownership, recognized and enforced by courts of chancery. So you need to understand the courts of chancery deal with the Circle Church and Chancery, Fleet Street, England. So the idea that the people have here in North America is that they have control of the school systems. The school systems and the pseudo court systems are both run from Fleet Street, England. That's a fact.
And we can't complain about it if we want to keep sending our children to those schools and
expecting a different result.
Right, an outcome. And so when they start acting like Europeans and intermingle and intermarrying with Europeans
against their own interest.
Yes, a sister told me the other day. I was talking to her. I went to a good friend's funeral that passed away, and she was like, "The hard ones are the hard ones," and I was like, "That's the most ridiculous European slang that I ever heard." You know, these little catchphrases we come up with. The hard ones are the hard ones when you don't have a choice or something's forced down your throat. That's what the end result is, because the heart should want what you want, which is your own. So if that's what your heart wants, that means your knowledge base is very limited. If you don't know the power from a melanated woman, if you don't know the power of your own people, then you really are lost. Because if the heart wants something other than what it is itself and no pride in it, that's a problem. So when we start saying the heart wants what the heart wants, we need to think about what we're saying. I remember Farrakhan made that ridiculous statement about his grandson marrying a European. It's not what the heart wants, what the heart wants. You control the heart. The only thing you can't control is how your heart's beating. But you can control your mind. And your mind connects with your beating heart. So the heart should want this melanated, beautiful looking sister. That's what the heart should want, not something different. And that's because you're put into a system where that is what's forced down your throat. And if you look right now at television, I remember Europeans coming on there saying how they literally use TV to get what they want. Now you got all the beautiful melanated sisters with European men, these pale men with no complexion, right? And now they're still your captives, but now instead of them raping you, you're just throwing yourself at them. You're giving yourself to them is what you're doing. And that's what they got all on TV. It's everywhere. So now our sons, to them, that's what's happening. That's what's beautiful. Or our young girls, because they stop messing with the sons now. Now they're doing the girls. They know if they mess with maternal, which is mother. What they're trying to do is trying to wipe us out on the place of earth. Our melanin is so deep that they can't wipe us out. So what do? They intermingle with us to stay alive. Then they take their children and marry them back into European society to try to keep that pale complexion. And then they keep, mixing them in until they no longer can see the melon. That's exactly what they do. And that keeps them alive for a while. So we need to be very cognizant of what we're saying and what we're putting in front of our children. And this all has to do with being educated, because as Todd said earlier, the lack of knowledge. That's how nations perish, from the lack of knowledge, not knowing about yourself, now who you are, how great you are, how wonderful you are. We lack that. And so we think everyone else is better than us. And it's a reversal. So we really have to change our mindset. So I'm really trusting that when you watch this video, this recording that we're talking about, that you really purchase the book and you really listen to what we are saying, and that you take some heed into it. Start picking up dictionaries. Start doing your own research to see what we're telling you is real. This is real. This is not fake. And we cannot survive on falsehood. We have to survive on truth. And I don't care who don't like it. The truth is the truth. And we have to live by that. So Ty's going to go over a couple more things he wanted to talk about. We're going to go over what the land is, worship, hereditament and color.
And that should be suffice.
Right,
but mainly they need to know what got us here.
Yes.
And where we need to be starting to take control of our lives.
And they should know that it starts right here. I mean, because I worked in more schools when I was younger. In Philadelphia, we had them in Philadelphia. We had them in Jersey. We had schools. But none of those schools are standing right now. And you know why? Because the support for the people was not there. And I want to talk real quickly, too, about everyone talking about accreditation, really quick, Taj. The thing is, if we want to accredit anything, we get our own board members together and accreditate our own. We don't need another system trying to tell us how to accreditate. And what happens if you get on the accreditation board, what happens is you have to teach exactly the curriculum.
That's a jurisdictional issue.
Yes.
In other words, like this, the very problem that you have is that they have jurisdiction over your families as property under what is rule of chattels, under wardship tenures. This is the reason why when you submit your children to them, the school board owns your children. That's why they can stick things in your children's arms without your permission. They can take things from your children. They can turn the children against the parents. The parents have no standing, not understanding that you're dealing with animal husbandry. It's not racism and prejudice. It's animal husbandry. Chattel is a French word for cattle, and they're treated absolutely no differently. Now let's go into land. Land includes not only the soil, but everything attached to it, whether attached by the course of nature as trees, herbage, and water, or by the hand of man as buildings and fences. That's known in law as accoutrements. Land signifies everything that may be holden and is defined as all things of a substantial and permanent nature. 5, wardship. Wardship is a late Middle English word dating back to the 1425 to 1475 era, and is established the personam guardianship over a minor or ward. And keep in mind, all the children that are submitted to the General Education Board are listed as state wards. This is how they claim authority and ownership of the child. That's what they do, what they want to do. You need to know that when you submit your children or subject your children to them, they become subject. Wardship is a military tenure involving the rights of the Lord to have custody as guardian of the body and the lands of the infant heir without any account of the profits. So you can see they use your children to generate profits, but the children themselves have no comeback, nor do the parents.
And notice that on the birth certificate, it says your child is under wardship.
Because it is ward.
Right, it's ward of the state. So
this is the reason why, as you were bringing that up, Prime Minister, while in the 30s, when after the Prophet registered the Moorish Holy Temple of Science as a civic organization, it countered the operations of the marriage certificates which were funding the United States Corporation Company, and then Franklin Delano Roosevelt then used the birth certificates to refund the bankrupted United States Corporation Company, etc., and that's where that has its origin or its political function. So you can see this stuff is more involved than people think it is. It's absolutely more involved than you think it is.
And we have to keep in mind, too, Grand Sheik, that when people have children in these hospitals and you're signing that birth certificate,
it's a bottomry instrument.
Yes.
First, you need to know what it is.
Yes.
It's a bond, and because the child can't sign for themselves under wardship, so they put the footprint, which indicates foundation, to say that the child is signed away in wardship to the corporate state by the mother and the hospital. And you'll recognize those operations in Christian Black Codes, I think Article 6. So in the Christian Black Codes, the hospital and the state determines the status of the children in relationship to the status of the mother. Now, logically, most of you are not aware that the animal training program, animal husbandry training program, which is known as the General Education Board, is a part of those military operations. Most people thought it was just there as a neutral institution for all humans to be prepared for society. Not so.
And I wanted to continue to say, a lot of you have called me in reference to, your children be taken away or whatever, and that's all about
They're already in wardship.
And the next thing you need to know also when you're talking about, I wrote that book on the rights of a child because you need to be able to know how to resend that information to have your child. You have to claim your child as property, and I know some of you all think that's crazy, but you have to claim your child as property. That's your property. Okay, that's where you have jurisdiction and ownership of your children. That's what they are. And someone just can't take your property. So you have to work with what you have. You have to learn this information and stop running to this person, that person, and take the time to really read the information. So I put out the book, The Rights of a Child, because people really don't know what your rights are as a parent. Or as a parent, you do have parental rights. You can't say, oh, they just took my children and I couldn't do nothing about it and all of that. They come in your house and force themselves in because you allowed them to come in. How can a vampire get into your house when you welcome them in? That's how they get in.
But people aren't aware that the birth certificate and when you submit them to the schools,
yes,
their position from a legal, not lawful,
right, but legal,
perspective
right,
is that you've abandoned the child under shipping to them. And thus, under the wardship tenures, they have right as FOFA to use that child to fund their operations. This is one of the reasons why many parents who, when recognizing that the children are being mentally injured by these institutions, find it so difficult when the corporate state, through their subdivisional contracting agencies, come and claim the property, i.e. the children, without a lawful court order, because they're already contracted to them under wardship. So this is another reason why we prepared this pamphlet, because you need to be made erudite on the real politics, because people look at schooling as something neutral. Schooling is not neutral at the Americas. Schooling is a military operation that you weren't not informed was a military operation to support colonial worker operations, i.e. to enforce and reinforce a caste system. So wardship, they don't have to account for the profits. Hereditaments, number 6, relates to the things capable of being inherited, be it corporal or incorporeal, real, personal, or mixed, and including and not only including lands and everything thereon, but also heirlooms and certain furniture, which by customs may descend to the heir together with the land. Once you understand the politics and the operations of the subdivisional agencies of the military operations under the doctrine of discovery, under the United States Corporation Company, now you understand why the corporate states have been stealing the land from Aboriginal people generation after generation under the doctrine of discovery through the chancery courts, etc., and you didn't understand what was happening to you. It's under wardship tenures. And so you need to be made erudite that the General Education Board is a military operation. It's not a neutral platform for common human erudition. Never was. The politics are and is for the public generally not to be aware of that. It's another reason why we presented this book, to give you some real political background on the suppression of pedagogy and the institution of the animal husbandry military operations of mind control known as the General Education Board, 1902, with its convention at Philadelphia. You need to know the history. Now, colored. Color is an appearance, a semblance, or simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real. Color is a prima facie or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible right, hence a deceptive appearance or a plausible right, yes. Assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise or pretext. That's the real meaning of the word color. And so you can, when people who can read know that that's the real lawful meaning of the word color. People who don't and send their children to the animal husbandry schools were told that that was Afrocentric identity for people who had melanated skin, not knowing it's a caste. They thought it was actually an identity issue. It's a caste. Now, so you got to be aware of these things and learn some of these things. And some of these things we shared in this little booklet. It could be more extensive, but you need to know that the General Education Board is a military operation. You thought it was a neutral platform for preparing humans for society. Yes, it is, but not in the concept that you were told. It's for permanent working class.
Yes. And so, you know, these are just some of the things that you need to know. Taj went through the book. It's just 20 pages, but it's a lot of information in there. And we didn't want to, like, fill up a whole book of information that people just don't get. And what you need to do is the things that you don't know the words to or you're not sure of is get yourself a dictionary, right? Have a dictionary for yourself.
Quality dictionary.
Yes, it's good to always have a Black Laws dictionary, a third or fourth edition. And then also use an American Heritage Dictionary, you know, which we use for our students, and you can find those too. Sometimes you got to find some of those in the secondhand store because a lot of those dictionaries are very expensive.
Older the better, mostly.
Right, mostly.
And you should have multiple dictionaries, not just a handful, multiple. You're going to have to take the responsibility to start taking control of your lives, particularly by taking control of your offspring, your children's lives. Failure to do so in law is referred to as abandonment. And this is one of the other claims that the corporate state operators of the United States Corporation Company justify their misuse on a chattel principle of our children, that you've been trained falsely to call racism, prejudice, and segregation. It really is a caste system of military tenures. That's the truth.
And prejudice is not a real word. If you look up the definition of the word prejudice, it has to do with the railroad workers, when it is a violation of your rights, your violation of your rights to be human. And that's something that El Malik El-Shabazz talked about, those formerly known as Malcolm X. And I always tell everyone you should really, really listen to his speech, The Ballot or the Bullet, because that speech is so iconic that is relevant till today. Now, of course, the language has to be updated because back then he was finding himself with the word colored and all, you know, those that uses word so-called Negro and things like that. But the bottom line is that the information in that speech is so valid. He talks about economic empowerment in your own communities, your own schooling systems, and why they should not be schooling your children. Listen, how can you complain to a system and tell them what you want your children to learn when you're teaching them in a system that wasn't designed for your children in the first place? So it was designed for your children to become a labor worker or a slave mentality, but not to be a creative thinker, not to be a so-called what they call lawyer or a doctor.
Or
philosopher, you know,
or
men
scholar.
of letters, which is writers and newscasters. It wasn't teaching your children to be that. It was teaching the lower class, which is considered lower class, the lower class Europeans.
Which is a caste.
Right, a casting system, and Asiatics. And this is what they prepare you for. So we're asking a system that was not designed for our betterment to change, and then we complain when it does not. You know, and so those are the things that we really need to look forward to. We need to look at what can we do to make things better. And here at Online Schooling for Moorish Children, that's what we do here. We teach our children about being themselves, to dress, to love yourself, to love the melanin in your skin, to love yourself. You know, you can't talk about nationality and birthrights, but even out talking about Noble Drew Ali, so we teach them about Noble Drew Ali. Why people say, why we don't learn about Noble Drew Ali? They don't talk about anybody that they don't want to talk about. And to them, Noble Drew Ali is scares them to death, because if you start learning about nationality and birthright, you're waking up.
You start liberating.
Yes, your mind is awakened. And so therefore, now they got to explain to you why you don't have a nationality, why they're called white and you're called black. These are all statuses. And just to give you a little bit to think about that, when you say they had that's that light-skinned black man, you know, over there. So if you just think about it, just take a moment to marinate on that. A light-skinned black man. Now, I want to color black not only to represent justice today, you know, because that's what black represents, but to let you all see, as dark as my melanin is in my skin, I don't look like this color that's on me, because it has nothing to do with color. It has nothing to do with the complexion or the melanin in your skin. There's a picture going around of a real melanated sister where everybody saw upset because the European said she's either a freak of nature or she's what did he say, a freak of nature or some beauty or relic or something. So what he was saying is because she's so deep on complexion, that it just took their eyes by surprise, because they thought they wore us down to the point where we don't look like ourselves, right? But as dark as that sister is, she don't look like that, okay? And she's absolutely radiant, beautiful. And, you know, that's something they want to get hold to so they can try to lower that melanin in that complexion. And that's what they want to do. That is all in their game, in their mindset. You have to learn to love yourself. Now, we all love different things. Some of us like different things, jewelry. We from different tribes, so we like a little bit of, you know, maybe makeup on your face. I keep my face this part clear. I don't put any coating on my face to change my complexion. I might highlight my eyes, sometimes maybe my lips, which I really don't care for that paint. But some of those things, you know, we do. I like my nails done. I like my little jewelry. Those are things that we love. But those and loving those things don't take away from who you are. You have to learn to love yourself. And that is it. I love me. I love everything about me. And I love me enough to know that I want to teach you how to love yourselves too as well. Now, I'm like the prophet. I came for the young and the yet unborn. The old can go if they want to. That's what the prophet said. He's not trying to pour new wine in old skins, for it will burst them. So this is the thing. If you look at the European strategy, they come for the young, right? The yet unborn. That's what they wanted, so they could train us to be better slaves, right? To have the European mentality. So that's the same mindset they had. So the prophet is saying, listen, I'm coming for that, to take back what was lost, to reestablish that. And so if we take our children and change the mindset today and let them learn to love themselves, everything about themselves, their history, which I call the legacy because it's not someone else's story, right? Learn to love your languages. Learn to love your clothing. Learn to love your culture. Learn to love you. Take back and learn to love you again. That's what's so vitally important. We have to love ourselves and stop trying to be someone else. And that came from No Drought. He told us, be yourself and not somebody else. We know for generations to generations we have educators and so-called doctors with PhDs and things like that who look like you and I, who will sell you down the river. These are the same people born over and over again that their only interest is themselves. We're not talking about those people because we know those people are in cahoots with the Europeans to try to keep us down, and we're looking at them. So they write books, and they write books about the Negro and black and all this, you know.
And Johnny can't read.
You know, just ridiculous things. But the bottom line is we know just because everybody writes a book don't mean it's a good book because you say it's made by an author who's supposed to be black or African American. Because the thing is this, when they're writing in those books and they're still using the terms black and colored and Negro, they don't have your best interests at heart because they don't write it in the language that should be written in, like Taj and I do, because they are looking to try to attract everyone. They don't want to educate you. So if I say I got a PhD in their education, because that's what it is, I got degrees in their education. The bottom line is this, their education is not your stories, okay? You need to know about yourself and in a language to improve thy society. That's what the prophet told us. We have to speak in our own language, in our own terms. We know that black, even the prophet said according to science, means death. We also know that black represents highness and justice, right? We're talking about in the traditional sense of the color black, of authority. That's what it represents. When it comes to your complexion, it has no affiliation with the human at all. And you have to ask yourself, you are more ancient than the word black. You were here because there was never a time when we were not. So how does a brand new word become your identity? Now, every nation that has melanin, from the Jamaicans to the Trinidadians, all call themselves black. There is a conditioning, a mindset. And all of us is not buying into that. We know black is a brand new word. It's only been around since the 12th or 13th century, and more used in the 14th and 15th century. So we know the original term of the word black anyway means pale. It has nothing to do with darkness or complexion. That we do know. When you talk about color, I had this conversation when we say people are of color. Well, that's the same as colored people. Okay, no one took a crayon. I can't erase this off. You know, they've now modeled, you can bleach it off with chemical peeling. But underneath the surface, you're still going to be that melanated complexion of person. So you can't be colored. Because color and black and white, all those are statuses. Why do you ask yourself, they talk about the Japanese, Chinese, Arabians, Hindus, they talk about us, when they Puerto Ricans, Trinidad, when they come to us, it says the white man and the black man. So they got two categories. They don't even say yellow man, red man anymore, because the Chinese and Japanese and things like that, and they don't call themselves yellow. And the so-called people they call mislabeled Indians do not call themselves red. Okay, it's an insult. So the whole color spectrum thing is out. Okay, it's played out, it's out.
It's a caste system.
Okay, it is. And we need to make sure that we identify ourselves as who we truly are and stop trying to be something else. So what we're trying to get through you today is education is so powerful. Erudition is powerful. And how do we know this information? By study, right, Taj? We've studied, we've learned, we've been studying this way for years. We're on the way to greatness. And as I get older in my age, I want to make sure that people can talk about the same things I'm talking about to you all. I'm looking with competence and surety, right? And the bottom line is this: we don't want 20 years come by from now. Me and Taj will be up in our ages in 20s. He'll be in his 90s, right? I'll be in my 80s and the 20s. And this is the thing with 20 more years. I want to be able to sit, and I always say this to people that know me, on a porch in an all-Moorish community. That's what I like to have. I'm sitting on a step, and I'm having me some cornbread and beans. It's two of my favorite foods. And I'm sitting out there just smashing the cornbread, you know, maybe teeth, no teeth, who knows. Sitting out there on the right, and I'm having this, and I say, Jamila, can you bring Prime Minister some cornbread and lima beans? Sure, Prime Minister, and she go get them, and I don't have to say what's in them, who cooked them, you know, where they grown from, you know, are they organic? I don't have to ask any of those questions. Because when the food comes to me with a nice glass of water, right, I know the water is alkaline, clean, and pure. I know that the food is clean and pure. I know whatever I'm putting to digest in my form is clean and pure. I don't have to worry about the digestive system, somebody poisoning me because they're trying to get rid of me, all of those things. That is the society that we want to live in. If I say, you know, Daoud, come and read, Prime Minister, a book. Daoud can read a book, and the book is talking about us in the book. It's very knowledgeable, it's educational, and he can read very, very well in a language to improve our society, not someone else's. So the bottom line is that we need to do these things for ourselves, and we have to do it in a community for ourselves. Stop asking another man to do what you will not do for yourself, because that's what you're asking. I even looked up, just to, you know, long story short, everyone was saying, Prime Minister, look into some funding so we can really, because, you know, people aren't paying, which is a shame to say that we're not paying. Do you know everywhere I went looking for some type of funding, even under the religious affidavit, they want you to have employees, which is a slave term, right under the master, which is the employer. Look up the terms. I don't have to lie in law. They want you to have a Social Security number or TIN or EIN number of some sort so that they can make sure that they track the fee out. Because I don't have the people that work at this school or contractors. I don't care whether they have numbers or not. That's not my interest. They contract here at the school. We're not eligible for that type of funding, even under religious corporation, unless they supply their numbers. Then I can get funding for that. So people say, well, why don't you do that? Because what happens is once you give those numbers to these governments, with these, I'm not going to say government, not government, these false governments, these people that claim to be government, de facto government, yes, what's going to happen is that they're going to start using that to try to bring you down. So when they come trying to close you down, try to put you up on charges.
It's back to jurisdiction.
Right, regardless, explaining is that that's where you put yourself. So you're asking someone for fiat, do you think they're going to give it to you without trying to control you? Do you think they're going to give it to you without trying to control your curriculum? The only way you can control your learning, your government, your real government, is you have to make it affordable. That means the fiat needs to come from us. Do you know all these privately funded schools, all the fiat comes from the communities of the people and donations? They don't come from outside sources. The reason that is like they don't want people to get into their businesses and try to run the way they want things run. Under the rights of indigenous people, I know some of you all don't think you're indigenous, but you are. You're the real indigenous people to this land. It states in Article 14 that the indigenous people have a right to educate their children in a manner and custom that they see fit, right, for their own culture, their own community, and their own language amongst their own people, right? That's basically what it says. And the bottom line is that is what we work under. That's what we need to do. You all are still working under a system that has nothing to do with us as a people. The sooner that you learn who you are, and I don't care what your religious affiliation is. Let me get that straight. I really don't care about that. It doesn't change who you are. That's the bottom line. You are Asiatic by origin, and you are Moorish by nationality. So let me repeat that for you again. You are Asiatic by origin, which means your beginning, where your start is. And that was in the land of the original Asia when it was only one landmass before the great earthquake that caused the great Atlantic Ocean. That's who you are. Before Africa and any of these other lands, Africa is a brand new landmass with a brand new name as well. Everybody want to run back to Africa. The bottom line is Africa is still brand new also. There was Asia before Africa. And I'm not talking about those people who are now all mixed up that they live in Asia and y'all want to call them Asians, Japanese, Chinese, or whatever, all the seeds of Hagar. I'm not talking about that. Before Hagar, we were here. So the bottom line is that is who you are by origin. And then your nationality by Moors, because Foot is the one that founded the Moors here. We found the foundation for us here. And our father is Foot. Out of those tribes from Noah and Ham and Cush, all those, Foot is where we fall in. So the bottom line is that when you are talking about yourself, you have to know your legacy. You have to know who your mothers and fathers are. You have to know where you fit in the human family. That's what you need to know. And then you'll have some race pride. The Prophet Noble Jolly said, have race pride and learn to love your race. Stop loving everyone else's. We make a just reason to love everyone but ourselves. And that has to stop. I don't love anyone more than I love myself. That is the bottom line. And of loving me, I love my children, I love my family, you know, and that's wonderful. When I look in the mirror and look at me, I love me, nappy hair and all. So whether you want your hair straight, nappy, braided, locked, whatever, learn to love self first. And that is the most important thing you could do for yourself. And then find out who you are, because there's people like myself and Taj just never going to stop talking. We're never going to stop giving you the information. And people say, oh, when you talk from the top of your voice, because I am passionate about what I'm saying. I want you to hear when I'm talking, because the bottom line is the Negro problem is my problem. It's your problem. It's Taj's problem. It's the Sheik problem. It's everybody's problem, because it's you still being called a Negro. That is a problem. And because it is your problem, you need to fix it. So if you don't like what somebody's calling you, you need to change it. Bottom line, you have the power. You are more powerful than you think. The power lies within you. And let me say this, sisters, without you, without us, there is no human family. All right, so the Europeans are using you all right now in the of love. They're using you to keep themselves alive. So learn to keep your own alive. Learn to love your own men and your own children. We always got the slave mentality. We're going to run and help somebody else. First, help yourself. And that is first helping your community. All right? And that's what we wanted to put out to you all today. Just wanted to thank you all for taking a little bit of time to listen to the sound of our voices today. We want you to do documentation like the rights of a child. Originally in 1934, redone in 1936 by a woman named Jed, and then the U.S. Assembly, I believe, didn't adopt it until 1959. So that's the original rights of the child. It talks about in Principle 3 how your children are entitled to a name and a nationality from birth. And so if you're naming your children somebody else's name and you're not proclaiming who they are nationally, now you are keeping your children in servitude, no one else, because the law is out there. Okay, Article 15 says everyone has the right to change their name and their nationality. So if you are a nationality that you don't think you should be, you have the power to change that. See, when these laws were created, Constitution and all these laws, let's just say, for instance, we have this argument they weren't created for us. Let's just entertain that for a moment, Taj. The bottom line is, if they were not, guess what? Now you have the power to use it, right? Because it's not talking about that you can, right? You have the right to utilize this information by constitutional law. By international law, any international document talking about the rights of being human, which El Malik talked about, that pertains to you. The rights of a child, that pertains to you. So even if these documents were not created with you in mind, so you want to make that argument, the argument stands that if that is the case, you can still utilize them today for yourself. So thank you for creating documentation that includes me. Okay, because I wasn't there when it was written, so I'm not going to argue who was sitting at the table. That's not my argument. My argument is now study the documentation and utilize it for your benefit, for your children's benefit. Utilize the information that is there. So we can argue all day about who created it. I don't care about that. Utilize the information that's in there. Learn the law and utilize it to your advantage. And people say, well, Prime Minister, how do you get this and that done? Because I use the law. I use the information. I know that I have rights, and I utilize my rights. You can do the same as well. All right? Taj, anything else you wanted to say?
Read and study.
Yes. So important, this information that we have in this little booklet. And listen, the book is $10, so we're saying we want everyone to donate to our school. I mean, you donate what you can, right, to keep the school alive. But the bottom line is they're also purchasing the book. And someone said, well, what am I going to get out of it? It's only $10. So if you feel like you got to have something for your fiat, then purchase the book for $10, okay? Because we took some time to put it together to make sure it's not only enjoyable but informative, all right? And when you have the right information, you can make an informed decision for yourself. You don't need somebody. One of the greatest things Prophet Noble Jolly did state that I love is that you don't need a middleman or a woman or a priest to intercede. If you have a spiritual connection and you believe in a creator, you can go right to your creator and speak to your creator on your own behalf. If that's the way you feel like you want to go on a religious affiliation or meditation or yoga or whatever you want to do, or chant or whatever you feel like that you need to do, because this spirituality and religion is a personal way. So I'm not coming here for a spiritual or religious. I'm coming here with truth and facts. And the fact of the matter is, as a melanated people, as the first creation on this planet Earth, we have the right to be human. We have the right to have a name and a nationality. We have a right to religion. We have a right to our school. We have a right to our education. We have a right to our erudition. We have the rights. And if you keep feeling like you don't have any rights, then you need to look again. Because where are you being taught today that you feel like that nothing applies to you but privileges when you have rights? Inform yourself and know your rights. You can go to circle7publishing.com to receive this booklet and other books from myself and the National Grand Sheik. It's circle7publishing.com. You can go there and get any books that we have and information. And if you're looking to join our schooling, you can go to onlineschoolingformoorishchildren.com. It's onlineschoolingformoorishchildren.com. It has the information. You can see that's an email to educationformoorishchildren@gmail.com. That's education with the number 4, moorishchildren@gmail.com, or erudition, the number 4, moorishchildren@gmail.com. We want to thank you for taking the time to listen to the sound of our voices today. And I'll see if the Grand Sheik has any closing remarks.
Yes. Keep in mind what they are. These are fundamental things that the parents need to know, and also to encourage you to support your more schooling for children online, and get this down, write this down. Keep in mind, since they did the counter move to Germany for sending representatives to New York to retrieve their gold in 2011, early 2011, and the politics that ensued was the dropping of a couple of buildings in New York. Since then, 11, that the corporate bankers of the Circle Church and Chancery and the Vatican operatives have been officially, but not made known to the public, running all operations of the United States corporation operations on the land, politically and jurisdictionally, at North America, in case you didn't know that. The other issue is that the alleged so-called de facto claim of the national debt, 40% of that total debt is student loans that are in debt for an education that does not serve them really or the society, which has much to do with the ongoing collapse that you see taking place across the land, and particularly reflected in all the major cities, because the people's so-called education does not really serve, i.e. constructive purposes, and they have no capacity to actually sustain or properly administer governmental order. In other words, the price is now being paid for that animal husbandry pseudo-education, and 40% of the national debt is for that education system. Guarantee you the corporate entities and foundations have become massively wealthy, and the people who went into debt for the animal husbandry educations have been taken and scammed, and no one wants to admit to it. However, we're not going to argue the issue. We want to say simply truth, to start taking control of your life. Yield the floor.
All right, and you can also send donations to the Cash App is $ online schooling MC. That is the Cash App. $ online schooling with ING MC. That is the Cash App. Or you can go right to our Education for Moorish Children. Or you can go straight to our online school for Moorish Children and go to the donate button, and you can donate there. If you want to sign your children up also, you can send us an email to educationformoorishchildren@gmail.com. All right, so we wanted to make sure that you take advantage of that, and we want to thank you for listening today. And we also have Sheik Bilal, who is doing some recording. You want to put your headphones on, or you good? So he's doing some recording just to make sure this time that it does take, because we've done this several times before, and we're probably exhausted now because we've tried to do this recording several times. So Taj made a special trip today to come in just so we can kind of do this recording, because it's very important that we make sure that you comprehend the importance of online schooling for Moorish children. I didn't start it because I didn't have something else better to do. I started because I had a dream. I was talking about education. I talked to Taj and several other people, the Defense Minister, Sheik Kareem Mohammed Bey, and I was saying we got to do something about the schooling. And, you know, everyone was talking about not funds for the building. If we get a building, who's going to fund the ETC, all these things. And we were just trying to find a way to bring the schooling back. And so that night I laid down after talking to a few people like the whole Tarik. I'll never forget, I laid down one night, and I jumped up in the middle of the night. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the rising. And I said to my son, Shamsuddin, hook up the recording. He was like, what are you talking about? I said, I got it. I said, hook up the recording. We're going to do it. We're going to start school online. We're going to do online schooling for Moorish children. And that was in 2015. He said, Mother, what are you talking about? I said, just start recording. He was all tired and rubbing his eyes. And he said, all right, whatever you say. And he started recording me. And I created a curriculum in less than 7 days. So the bottom line was that it was meant to be. And I remember always as a child, dreams are visions of the pillow, reverence them, for they come from on high. Because when you have a thought of something and you don't act on it, now look at all these years later, everyone else is doing online schooling. This was in 2015 I did this. Now we're in 2023 and everybody's got online schooling. Even when they had the pandemic, everybody was screaming, how are they going to teach online? How are they going to teach online? We were already online. And then people were calling me, can you help us with how to get online? I said, why would I give you my intellectual property for nothing? A servant is worthy to hire. Why would I take my intellectual property that was given to me in a vision and give it to you for nothing? Hasn't that people been doing that their whole lives? Absolutely not. I would not do that. So think about that. Your intellectual property is very valuable. No one can really pay you for your intellectual property. No one can really pay you for that. So the bottom line is you have to make sure that you understand its value. That's for you to comprehend. And just stop giving everything away from free, all right, because you cannot survive off of free, all right? We know that they only have this fiat that they give us in the world to utilize. Is how we pay for things. That is how we pay for it. So if that's what we're still using right now, that's what we need to make sure we pay others to make sure that they are worthy of their time, all right? And I have to say, please stop asking the National Grand Sheik to do everything for nothing, because he doesn't work for anything. You still have to give him some fiat for the things that he does do. I mean, he's worthy of it. And for those who think that we are rich, Todd, we got all this fiat. Yes, they're not in their right state of mind. You know, we would love to be able to have fiat so we could do other things with it. If we had fiat, we wouldn't be in this condition right now. We would have a lot of things that we want to have because we would be able to sit at the table. Remember, it takes power to sit at the tables that we need to sit at. Okay, and with that power, fiat is a lot of times on how you get it. All right, so support your own, Morris. Okay, and until then, everyone be safe. All right, we're looking forward to hearing from all of you after this post. We want to make sure that you sign your children up today for online schooling for Moorish children. And if you don't have any children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews, that you just support us by donation. All right, until then, stay safe. Peace and love, everyone. All right.